I'm captivated. I'm captivated. I'm captivated.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to Try It Thursdays. And we're back again with here at Tea Time Afternoon Social with Marion Nixon. She's a positive mindset coach. We've had 2 wonderful days so far talking to her about changing our lives from self-doubt, self-confidence, and overcoming some of the childhood traumas that we may have had and into more of a mindset freedom. And one of the things that might hold us back is procrastination. And today, Marion's with us to talk to us about some breakthrough tips to overcome some of that procrastination. So thank you again for joining us today, Marion, and glad to see you back.
I'm glad to be back.
And I'm just going to turn it over to you and have you explain to us some of the things that we can do to overcome that procrastination.
Okay, well, most of the tips that I've seen around procrastination are about our self-discipline, of working through things, of setting up systems and rituals and to get you to do things. But those are all conscious mind, rational mind approaches. And I find it more helpful to look at why are you procrastinating? Why are you putting off doing something that very often you either want to do or you know that you have to do? And so if you're looking, and I've come to the conclusion that there's 3 main reasons why we procrastinate. One is we're feeling anxious about it, or we're feeling overwhelmed by what has to be done, or we lack confidence in our ability to do it. And so going back and looking, and I find for myself, if I find myself putting off something, even if I'm not consciously feeling anxious, if I stop and say to myself, what am I feeling? Sometimes I do become aware that there is a low level of anxiety that I've been ignoring. And if I sit down and allow that to allow myself to feel it and identify what am I actually feeling anxious about, then I can deal with that. And instead of trying to push through the procrastination, by actually just taking those few minutes to identify how I'm feeling, and then and allowing myself to feel it, because that's one of the biggest things in my work, is not making people wrong for how they're feeling. Feeling is just a feeling, and very often, in fact, I'd say most of the time, when we're justified in feeling whatever that is. There's a reason why we're feeling anxious about doing this particular task. And so breaking it down to what are you anxious about? And that's often you're feeling overwhelmed, or you feel that you don't have you're not feeling confident, or maybe it involves a conversation with a difficult person, or making a phone call that you're not quite sure how to talk to that, making this, for instance, if you're new at sales, you might be making a sales phone call and you're feeling uncomfortable about it. So then stop and say, okay, I'm not used to doing these sales calls, so of course I'm feeling anxious about it. That's okay. Now what am I going to do to help me feel better about making the phone call? And then when you think about, well, what it's, go through a whole process there about till you're feeling confident about making the call, then you can make the call and you probably get a much more positive result, because the other person will feel your positive attitude. If you just push through that procrastination, make that call, the person's going to feel the tension in your voice. and they're not going to respond that positively to you.
Right. And getting to know that, one of the things we've learned is being prepared for that call, knowing they're going to answer one of two ways, yes or no, and having an answer for if they say no, what are you going to say? So it's just being, like you said, being confident when you pick up that phone and being confident, say, it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to talk to them.
And I would go further than that and say, well, in what way will that person benefit from your call?
And
so it's not only about you wanting to sell them something, but you're actually phoning to offer them something that will be of benefit to them. And that, for most people who find sales difficult, it's often because they themselves are resistant to being sold to. So if you turn that sales call into, I'm actually offering this person something that will benefit them, so it becomes more a service, it's easier to make the call than to think, oh, I've got to sell this thing to them.
Right. That's a mindset shift, and taking it off of you and trying to come across as
somebody that's actually caring about them, and offering them something that could be of use to them.
Right. And they may not want to, you may not turn them into a sales, but you may turn them into a network connection where you get your...
And the salespeople say that it can take 5 to 7 contacts before somebody will buy. So if your first contact is what I call a soft conversation of, a little bit of relationship building and making an offer in a way that I'm offering you a service, or I'm offering you a product that could be of benefit to you. The other person's going to be far more willing to talk to you again. If they say no, and say, well, fine, can I follow up with you, in a few weeks' time or whatever. And when you make the follow-up call, they're going to be far more receptive.
Right.
Than if you try to sell them, and then a month later you phone them and you try to sell them again.
Right.
Then they just get more and more resistant. Whereas if it's more around relationships and what do they need and how this product will fit their needs and whatever, by the time you get to the 5th one, they're probably going to be willing to buy.
Right. And that's the key too, is building those friendships or those relationships, and that also helps, I think, with that procrastination. Once you stop resisting and going, oh, I'm not worried about making a sale today. I'm worried about finding a relationship today. I want to expand build your network, and this is step 1 of the sales process. I don't have to close the process today. Today's just starting it. Right. And that approaching life as a sales call, like when you're wanting to change you changed your whole career to becoming a coach, but you didn't have to just go out and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. You let things kind of evolve. Isn't that right? That you found you had to have one thing say no. The job world, the corporate world told you, no, we don't want you here. So you had to listen to that no. And now what am I going to do with that no? Am I going to just sit here for days on end and do nothing because I'm afraid to get out there and keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off? Or am I going to get up and do something? Like I said with that sales, so it's picking up the phone. What am I going to do today? So.
Yeah, and the other another big one is overwhelm, and for that is to break the task into small pieces, and to to prioritize what are the, and if part of the overwhelm is that not necessarily that the job is so difficult or overwhelmed, but that the amount of time in which you have to do it might be very tight, and you're overwhelmed by the deadline rather than the task. So look at what is critical, and you may not be able to do a perfect job, but can you do an 80% good enough job? So look at what are the critical aspects of it and prioritize those, and also look at what's possible to delegate if you're in a position where there are people who could help you. And if you don't have employees or colleagues, is there anybody else you could ask for help or backup, or doing other things in your life to free you up so you've got more time to do this? If you can get out of the overwhelmed mindset, there's often options that you could look at.
Right.
That there's other ways of doing things, or other, I have a philosophy. They are always options. And when you think there aren't any, it's because you haven't seen them yet.
Right.
And that's where the shift of mind. If you shift your mindset, you can see options that you haven't yet seen.
Right. You can, and that goes back to, we were talking about learning and growing, that sometimes we procrastinate and we feel all overwhelmed because we don't know what to do. But if we get out there and learn, and like you said, you're bringing your business more online and all the technology things, just take the instructions and read them slowly and go one step at a time. And then when you look back, you're like, oh, I did do it. But it's because
I've had many happy dances when I've done many happy dances when I've achieved something that for a techie person is very small. But I've had to kind of read this and do this and experiment with that, and it works. And I think,
but if you procrastinated and never even read the directions, you would never have gotten to that. So, so that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. No, tech often leaves me feeling like I really want to run away. But then take it down. I take a break, remind myself that it's a learnable process. Other people have learned it, I can too. And then go back and read, find some instructions, read them slowly, and then implement them step by step on it. And the other one is confidence. That the third thing for procrastination is a lack of confidence. And that again is looking at what you have done in the past, and so if your lack of confidence is because you think you don't know enough, then do the learning. Ask advice, and but give yourself permission to feel nervous about doing something, or but then also know that, again, step by step, how much of this can I do? What do I know already? What do I still need to learn? And so instead of sort of sinking into the feeling of it, or sort of doing that sort of brash, pushy thing of going through it and pretending to be a know-all, to actually just break it down into its bits. How much of it do I know how to do? How much of it do I need to get advice on? What do I need to actually just go troll the internet and get some information? It's just. But first, it always comes back to acknowledging yourself and how you're feeling, and it's actually okay to feel like that.
Right.
And then I think it's Carl Rogers that said something to the effect of, when I accept myself as I am, then the paradox is that I can change.
That's a fabulous quote to think about. when we think about who we are. And that constant learning and then practice. I've always wanted to be in public speaking, and so I spent 9 years in Toastmasters and practicing public speaking and learning those skills and allowing myself to be vulnerable enough to be evaluated. You know, and letting somebody else take a look and say, well, you could do this a little bit better and that a little bit better. And did you know you had this habit or that habit? Because sometimes we don't see everything because we're used to it. But getting with you, like with a coach and things where somebody could point out, did you know you had this habit, or did you know that this was an area that you were struggling with? That's also a part of that self-discovery and that learning, and that we don't have to do it all on our own.
No.
And
one of the things I've learned also, I learned it from a colleague actually, he was very strong in terms of feedback, is that you always start with telling the person what they've done that works for them, that has worked. So he said the kind of thing do more of, and then what you didn't like about the way they did things, to say to them, would you consider doing that differently in future because, and you give a reason, for instance speaking, would you consider articulating more clearly, because where I was sitting I couldn't hear you properly.
Right. And then ending on
a huge difference.
Right. And then ending on another positive note.
You're not making the person wrong.
No. Because we're not perfect and we could all use improvement. But if we don't step outside ourselves and let somebody else give us that feedback, we may not ever see what we need.
But that feedback about, would you consider doing it differently, and then giving them a reason why, instead of saying you didn't do it right, or you could improve. Right. Even saying you could improve on that implies that you didn't do it well enough. There's a sort of undercurrent. But would you consider doing it differently because I couldn't hear you the way you did it, or because I don't know, whatever the reason is why you would like them to do it. It's a much softer approach, and doing something differently doesn't have that same implication of that you did it wrong the first time.
Right. And even giving them options of, did you know it could be done this other way? Have you ever seen it done this other way?
Well, yeah, that might be.
And helping people to see.
It isn't even really about offering a suggestion. It's so much as saying, I couldn't hear you.
Right.
Would you consider doing it differently because I couldn't hear you?
Right.
So you then it's up to you how you wish to choose how to. Well, I suppose there is. Yeah, you can speak louder or articulate more clearly or whatever. But it's the actual method. How you apply that is up to you. But I just said that was another sort of life-turning moment for me.
Right.
That soft feedback. Taking the hidden criticism out set me free, because I was very. I found feedback very difficult because of my own insecurities, and when I learned that, it set me free in a way that's been quite life-changing.
You probably aren't as much leaning towards procrastination as much now that you've learned these techniques of I
think there's always times when we procrastinate, but I find it's instead of pushing through and then I don't work efficiently because I'm in that resistant mode and I'll get sidetracked all the time. If I just, I take the time out to sit and say, okay, why am I reluctant to do this? Right. And I deal with that with my fear. Then it makes life a lot easier and gets me through it much quicker.
It's discovering, am I procrastinating, or is this a time for me to pause? Because sometimes we do need to stop and we do need to reflect. And if that's not procrastination, and we can't just bring ourselves down because, oh, I'm putting it off, but oh, well, maybe I need to put it off. Right. Why am I putting it off?
Because I need some time out.
Right.
And then you take your time out instead of wasting your time trying to push through, and then you don't get your time out, and you do a lesson. What you're doing is it becomes an issue, and you may not do it to the level that you would like to or are capable of doing it because
right, because
you're not fully focused, or whatever.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for giving us some insights there on that procrastination and how we can kind of break through that. And I'm glad you've joined us all week. And as I've said before, we'll put all of Marion's contact information in the comments with the videos. And tomorrow we're going to have a little bit more fun talking to her about her area. She's from Cape Town, South Africa. I haven't learned very much about that area. So tomorrow we're going to find out a little bit about what that's like living there. So thank you so much for joining us today, Marion, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Great.
I'm captivated.